government says it is currently processing more than 9,000 applications for renewable energy projects as part of addressing the load-shedding energy crisis. It says this process is part of the environmental impact assessment. The Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, Barbara Creecy, revealed this in a media briefing in Cape Town ahead of her budget vote speech in Parliament this afternoon. She said the renewable projects will be a mixture of solar and wind energies. Now, let's discuss this. We're now joined via Zoom by the Minister, Barbara Creecy. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, ma'am. So we are currently experiencing an energy crisis, as we've said, and, with the grid capacity just being an urgent matter now. Just talk to us, Minister, about the process that is to unfold involving the more than 9,700 megawatt renewable energy applications that your department is now tasked with. Importantly, how will this be then prioritized?
Good afternoon and greetings to all your viewers at home. Well, I think that what South Africans want to know is that government is doing everything in our power to ensure that we cut red tape when it comes to the necessary approvals for a range of projects that would increase the megawatts on our grid. And what I was sharing earlier in the briefing today is that we have over 9,000 megawatts of energy. About 3,000 megawatts of that is solar and the rest is wind. And what we have managed to do is to cut the approval time from 107 days to 57 days. We believe that it's still possible to do all of the necessary approvals and at the same time ensure that we have a decent quality decision. There are also in the pipeline 15 projects that would relate to transmission and distribution. And I think that we all know that increasing our transmission capacity is one of the major priorities at the moment. And these projects would also be receiving urgent attention so that we can try and get the necessary environmental approvals.
Minister, of course, you mentioned there a mixture of solar and wind energies that will provide a solution. The other one, of course, is gas. Let's now talk about that other solution that may add much needed additional electricity supply to the grid. I mean, just today, the Department of Transport granting Powership access to 3 of the country's ports for the next 20 years. What does this mean, particularly as far as your department is concerned, just given some of the environmental concerns that we've been hearing from civil organizations, but also, of course, your department acting very cautiously as we are talking about this problem?
Well, unfortunately, I don't want to speak specifically about Powership because in terms of the regulatory environment, I'm the appeal authority. But what I can say to you is that all strategic infrastructure projects and emergency power generation is a strategic infrastructure project. We have also cut the lead time to 57 days. And I think that we would want to make sure that where it is possible to enable these projects to come onto the grid, that can be done. Of course, as I say, I don't want to speak about any specific project because I am the appeal authority, but the view of the department is that gas is what we call a transition enabler. It has a lower carbon footprint than coal, and it's definitely part of government's energy mix.
Let's just go back to what you've just said now, in as far as, just cutting those numbers of approvals to 57 days. What does it normally take? I'm especially wanting you to talk about, more than 9,000 applications that we were just talking about in terms of renewable energy, particularly when we look at solar and wind. So you are reducing it to 57, which is important. What happens next?
So what happens with any environmental application requires a basic assessment, and that would be an assessment of what is the environmental impact of the project and what would be the mitigating measures so that we lessen the environmental impact. And of course, there has to be a public participation process so that communities that will be affected by the project have an opportunity to comment and also have the opportunity, if necessary, to suggest mitigation measures that they would think would be important.
Minister, very importantly, of course, your budget vote. You know, what are just some of the key priorities that you are elevating for the next year?
Well, I think, first of all, there is what we call the domestication of the Convention on Biodiversity, the Kunming-Montreal Protocol that was adopted in December 2022. We recently adopted a white paper on conservation and sustainable use, and this is our attempt to achieve what is known as the 30 by 30 goal. What scientists are telling us is that by 2030, 30% of the land and 30% of the sea needs to be placed under conservation. We will obviously not achieve that goal by 2030. We're increasing the conservation estate by about 0.5% per annum. What is very important for us and has always been a pillar of our approach to conservation is that communities surrounding protected areas do need to benefit from having protected areas in their midst. In this particular financial year, SANParks will be entering into 14 public-private partnerships. And these public-private partnerships will create an additional 2,000 jobs around our protected areas. And they will also result in a 75 million rand spend for goods and services from small and medium enterprises that would arise from those surrounding communities. Another very important part of this year's plans is to move ahead with our plan for the voluntary exit of captive breeding of lions. You will recall that it was recommended by the high-level panel that we need to ban this exercise, and we have called on those involved in the captive breeding trade to voluntarily register so that we can look at means to secure their option, their exit from their voluntary exit from the trade. What is also important this year is the focus on further curbing rhino poaching. Umfolozi in KwaZulu-Natal has become a rhino poaching hotspot. And this year we will be investing 40 million rand in assisting Izimvelo KZN Wildlife Authority to replace the fence, one of the factors in the increase in rhino poaching in that particular park.
And as we close off, Minister, what you're talking about in as far as the latter is concerned is, of course, you know, just combating wildlife crime in its entirety. Just talk to us about what this then means practically, particularly when you start talking about, you know, Nat joints prioritizing crime around wildlife.
Well, last week in Cabinet, a decision was taken to approve the integrated strategy to combat wildlife crime. What we know is that rhino poaching, abalone poaching, the snaring of pangolin, and also the illegal removal of succulents, particularly from the Northern Cape, is a highly sophisticated, syndicated, organized crime operation. We're very pleased that the strategy has been approved. And what it means is that all of those arms of government that sit in Nat joints will be deciding on emergency measures that can be implemented over the next 6 months to curb this highly organized and syndicated wildlife trafficking.